Well, as I said a little bit earlier, for a variety of reasons, you could develop problems with your shoulders. And there's a lot of reasons why that could happen. And fortunately today, we have a doctor that can give us some advice about that. Dr. Roger Schoen, he's of course with the Saddleback Medical Center. And you're with the joint replacement area.
That's right,
Welcome.
yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Welcome, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's talk about, well, in general, you do all kinds of joints. We're going to primarily focus on shoulders and possible shoulder replacement. We hear about hip replacement, knee replacement, but you don't hear as much about shoulder replacement. You hear about, definitely surgery. So kind of walk us through that. First of all, is this something that you see primarily because people are active and they've hurt themselves in a sport, or maybe over time? I had mentioned that we have a lot of gardeners here that maybe pick up a bag of soil or whatever it might be, or just repetitive movements over the years.
Yeah, so shoulders, it's interesting, like you mentioned, shoulder replacement is not as common as some of the larger joints like hips and knees. Shoulder replacements have traditionally been about 2% of the joint replacements that are done in this country, but it's a very common problem. Shoulder arthritis is a very common problem. I was reading some statistics, and about a third of Americans over the age of 60 will have a problem with shoulder arthritis in their life. Now, it's not usually something that is debilitating. People can have a mild form of it, but like you mentioned, this kind of underlying problem with the shoulder joint can make someone prone to having an injury lifting a bag of soil, like you were mentioning, or being a little too strenuous on the tee and actually swinging a little too hard. They may feel a sudden increase in their pain. So yes, it is definitely something that affects people who are active, like our community here.
You certainly hear about it in professional golfers all the time.
Absolutely.
Now, what about just people who develop osteoporosis? Can that be a condition that could affect your shoulder enough that you need replacement surgery? Or is that more about the bones around there rather than the sockets? Yeah,
more the second scenario. Osteoporosis is another topic that I'm very passionate about because it's such an important thing. It actually leads to more issues with fractures. And so, of course, we like to try to do a lot in the way of screening to get people tested to see if they have it, because there's a lot of amazing medications out there that can help prevent these fractures. We usually see it in the hips or lower extremities, but we see it in the arms and shoulders too. People can fall and break any bone. But no, I think there's a similar word that gets used a lot, which is osteoarthritis, which is a lot more what we're talking about here, which is where people end up having a breakdown of the joint. The normal smooth gliding surfaces of the shoulder socket become damaged with time. And that's usually where people end up coming to see me because because they're having issues. They're not as active as they used to be, and they're having to give up things they love to do.
Right. And again, that's something you hear about in a lot of people that golfers and tennis and things like that, the osteoarthritis. And there's the commercial with Mickelson in it and talking about his hands and things like that. So is that where, when you have osteoarthritis, does that often come from people who are more active, or can it come from happen just because people are prone to have RA?
Absolutely. So that's a great question. So Mickelson's commercials that you've been seeing are more having to do with the inflammatory arthritis types, like RA, rheumatoid arthritis. Osteoarthritis is, like you were saying, that it's a wear and tear, an overuse type of thing, and it's an accumulation. When we're born as babies, we're almost all our skeleton is almost made out of cartilage completely. But as we get older, there's only cartilage on the ends of our bones in the joints, and that becomes the smooth gliding surface, but it only gets thinner as we get older. So yes, as adults and as retired folks, we start to see people getting a breakdown in that cartilage, and that's when bone starts rubbing on bone, and it becomes painful, and people have a hard time doing things that they love to do, such as the sports we were discussing, and gardening, and walking their dogs.
Okay, a lot of nuances when it comes to arthritis, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. There's not just one type of arthritis.
So let's talk about replacement surgery for your shoulders. And you are replacing the joints, right? The ball and socket, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely, yes. That's exactly what we do in a shoulder replacement. From time to time, and it's not, shoulder surgery is not usually my first or even second option. Many times I treat patients with medications or supplements or injections, and we can often get people to a very functional level. But in some people, I had a patient the other day who came in and he said he could not push the turn signal on his car. It was just too painful for him to move his left shoulder. So for people like him, and they've reached the end of all the non-operative measures, we do offer a surgery where we replace the ball and the socket, just like you said. We replace the ball with a metal ball, that's called the humeral head. And the socket is called the glenoid, and we replace that usually with a plastic or polyethylene liner. And this has an excellent track record, and I'm always amazed to see how well people can do even 2 or 3 months after a replacement. They get their lives back.
When someone gets a shoulder replacement and the therapy that goes along with that is, I'm surprised, like you said, 2 or 3 months. What about just in general, long term? What's the prognosis? Do the pain go away? Can it come back again?
So the main reason we do this surgery is to get rid of the pain, and by and large we are successful at that. People almost always report that their pain is gone by the 6-month mark, or it's very nearly gone. Long term though, you asked an excellent question, is like how long do these last? And we have some statistics to guide us here, and we know that about 85 to 90% of shoulder replacements will still be functioning at the 15-year mark. And the statistics do change a little bit after the 20-year mark. After 20 years, we're not sure exactly how much longer they're going to last. And most of the statistics we have are based on implants that were placed 20 or 30 years ago. And so the implants are better now, the materials they're made out are better now, the plastic is better, they have a lot of technological advances. One of the problems that the body has with plastics is that it gets oxidized. So we talk about antioxidants. Companies are now putting antioxidants like vitamin E in the plastic to fight this problem with oxidation of the plastic. So we think that it's going to last a lot longer in the future, but that's the best information we have now is the statistics at the 15-year and 20 marks that I gave you. What's the alloy that's used for the metal? Well, we use lots of different types of alloys, but by and large, the ball is made out of cobalt chrome, which is a medical-grade stainless steel. There are titanium stems or grit blasted or different coats that they put on the different stems to help them integrate into the bone. And that's where I'm talking about some of the technological advances, because we used to cement all of these metal stems into the bone. And cement is an inert substance. It doesn't actually grow. It's not a living interface. But now with some of the newer technology that we have, and like I was saying, the grit blast or the coatings that they put on there, the bone actually will grow onto the implant and be a living interface so that it doesn't wear down and break down with time.
Wow, that's incredible, You mentioned this is obviously the last resort, really. You try and alleviate the pain in other ways. What are some of those ways that you would do that and then find you get to the point, well, this is no longer successful?
Well, one of the first things we do for arthritis is to try to work with a physical therapist. We want people to have a good posture. I was like your mom told you got to sit up straight. I got to do the same thing myself. And you want to be able to have a good posture because it puts a lot less strain on your shoulder, especially when you're lifting and doing things. You want to use good form. Other things we can try are some supplements. Now, I know there's a $1 billion with the B industry around these things such as glucosamine and turmeric.
Do those work?
You know, it's interesting. The jury is still out. I mean, the glucosamine and chondroitin, there is definitely an anti-inflammatory effect, and that's been proven in many studies. But as far as being able to give someone a longer functioning joint, it's not been proven. As far as like turmeric, though, I've been reading a lot of interesting studies about turmeric. It's, again,
obviously you're talking about the spice.
The spice, yes, and actually the actual medical term or the scientific term for turmeric is curcumin. So if you actually look up curcumin on PubMed, for example, you'll find tens of articles about it showing that it does have an anti-inflammatory effect, and it maybe has a long-term effect, but we just don't know that right now. So supplements, I don't have a problem with them, especially when it's a spice. I don't think you can overdose on a spice, although I'm not an authority on that. Other things that we can do for people with arthritic joints, though, is if your stomach can tolerate it, anti-inflammatory medications such as Aleve, Motrin, or there are stronger prescription dose strengths. And we can also give people selective, not judiciously, we can give cortisone injections into the shoulder. Cortisone shots are a powerful anti-inflammatory. We use a man-made preparation of what your body naturally makes, and it actually it just decreases the inflammation, which is the final pathway which causes pain in the shoulder. Can
I ask one more question? Even though this isn't surgery related, you talked about anti-inflammatories. What about Humira? Is that one? Is that, because I've heard good and bad. You know, one of them, you get an injection, and therefore it's in your system for a long time. So if you have an adverse reaction, you know, there it is in your system.
Right.
And I've also heard that there can be some adverse effects to it over a long period of time, cancer, or I don't know if that's true or not, but
absolutely.
Since this is your business, I'd like to ask that.
Well, actually, I would probably defer further questions to a rheumatologist about Humira. It's typically given to people who have rheumatoid arthritis or inflammatory arthritis. So it's not for the general public to be taking Humira, and it would definitely be under the supervision of a rheumatologist.
All right. So if people think they're at that point, the first thing they need to do, of course, go to their primary and move on from there. And then you take the steps of, can we alleviate this in a simpler manner? But if it's to that point, then surgery is the option.
Absolutely, and in fact, I shouldn't overplay the fact that, you know, surgery is the last option. In fact, one of the things that I've noticed is that when people do very well after these replacement surgeries, it's pretty amazing to see the life-changing difference that people have. So people have been suffering; they've been giving up a lot of the activities that they love to do, and then once they have their shoulder replaced, the pain's gone, and they tell me, you know, even 2 months afterwards, that, man, this is so much better. I don't know why I waited so long. In fact, some people are kicking themselves. I shouldn't have waited so long. Last question.
You get that surgery done, do you have to be more careful if you're somebody who loves to play golf or tennis or gardening? Do you have to watching a little bit more?
Thank you for that question. That's an excellent question, and the short answer is yes, you do need to be careful. We do tell people that these implants aren't designed to take impact. And in fact, there's 2 ways we do the shoulder replacement, especially if we do the reverse shoulder replacement. We tell people that it takes a little bit longer for their bones to adapt to the new geometry of their shoulder. As the bones adapt, and they will actually get stronger and be able to avoid things such as stress fractures. So at first, we tell people to be very careful, not lift more than 10 or 15 pounds. But as time goes on, usually once people pass the 1 or 2 year mark, we kind of let people do anything they want to.
Okay, good to know. Doctor, thank you very much for coming on today. Great information. And if you would like more information, you can go to memorialcare.org/SB joint replacement. And we'll be right back.